You can't use the bathroom in Belleville without a key because of the addiction and homelessness crisis in your community. What the actual hell is going on?
The problem we've had in Canada, it's not that we are the 51st state, but we were called out for acting like it.
They don't want your economy to thrive, Brian Williams. They don't want your resources out of the ground. It's not working.
Not
Brian.
working.
It's not working.
It's failing. The only way out, to your point, is more conversation.
That's what Ryan and I are hoping that we can do with Household Matters is rebuild trust, rebuild conversations. We are creating accessible politics that generates conversation.
You're listening to Maple Leaf with Ryan Williams. Ideas that move a nation.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm Ryan Williams with Maple Lead, and today I have my good friend and former colleague, Michelle Ferreri. Thanks for being here today.
Woo, where's the studio audience? Woo, the crowd goes wild.
And Michelle, we served together in the 44th Parliament?
What's the 44th?
44th Parliament. Michelle representing Peterborough and Kawarthas.
Yep.
Myself with Bay of Quinte. Served the same time just after COVID and in Parliament for almost 4 years.
Yeah, nothing really happened during our time.
Nothing happened at all.
It was really light news days.
That's right.
Yeah.
It went by real quickly. So, we enjoyed our time together, though, both in the Conservative Party, many different things that we dealt with and became friends during that time.
I thought we were friends, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think so. I think you're still friends. So much so, we actually started a business together just recently, and it's called Household Matters. Do you want to tell everyone what we're doing?
Listen, yeah, so thanks for having me, Ryan. So I just want to say, for those of you who may not know who Ryan is, he's like literally the nicest guy. And that is a really hard label to get in politics. So I say it genuinely. He's kind. I call him Santa Claus. He's a genuine guy. He loves to build team. He loves to find where people thrive. And then he likes to showcase that ability in that person. So after we lost the election, which was super fun, it was hilarious.
Yes,
Yeah,
fun.
it was a really good time. But one of the biggest lessons I say to people is losing is actually the best way to learn. And so we lost the election. We went back and forth. We were chatting about all of this stuff. And I got a phone call from one of our colleagues, actually. And she said to me right after I lost, she said, "Michelle, I think you need to get on social. I think you need to start talking even more." And I was like, really? Like, you just lost because you think, oh, people don't want to hear from me. Because it's a bit of a psychological hit to lose, right? And so I started to do more videos and more posts, and my numbers actually were going up. There was this thirst for sort of uncuffed conversation. And from a perspective of somebody who was on the inside, right? So I was getting all these podcast requests of like, what's it really like? Is there like this big black curtain? And is there this big mastermind and a puppet master? And I'm like, you're giving them all way too much credit. Way too much credit. But it really furthered a conversation with you and I as we talked every day and sort of went down this journey of where do we go now from being an MP to what are we now? Because my background was journalism, content creation, but now you have this MP experience that, quite frankly, very, very few people have the opportunity to have. You saw behind the curtain, and now you were able to look at a time when politics has never been more polarized and never been more engaging. Like, you've never seen people pay attention to politics in the way that they were. And so Ryan phones me up and I said, I just have this, what are we going to do? And Ryan says, what about this notion of Household Matters where you and I are creating content that also explains like accessible politics? Like, what does this actually mean? The biggest thing I see with people is they don't know the process. They don't know the process of how a bill is put forward. They don't know a process of what it means because, quite frankly, and my trolls love to make fun of me for this, it's boring. It gets policy and politics is not for Joe Blow. What they care about is when I go to the pumps, how much is my gas? Can my kids afford a home? Can they get a job? How much are bananas? Right? And so Ryan and I came up with this idea where we are creating accessible politics that generates conversation, setting the table of here's what we know and see. Here's what we think in the big issues that are impacting your everyday life, your household, but then allowing you to leave going, okay, so what do I believe and what do I want? It's to generate and to further that. It's a springboard for conversation and decisions. Because if you are really going to change hearts and minds, telling people they're wrong and they're the problem isn't the way to do it. So that was kind of the idea behind Household Matters, where content creation is generated through both you and myself, and eventually more people, that allows people to get the information they need to possibly challenge what they think they know.
And what I think was amazing about Parliament is what we did do well and we enjoyed about it was those subjects that affected Canadians that we had some experience in and we really championed. Yourself was, of course, the champion for the woman, right? And for families, champion for, what's happening with the drug policies across Canada, the household itself. I was a champion for economic development, competition, looking at industrial policy, looking at taxes for our businesses as a whole, and IP, intellectual property, ideas, our sovereignty of our nation when it comes to the digital economy. And I really enjoyed that. And we got some good policy completed with that in the party, but the public weren't part of that.
Well, I think what was cool about what you and I have is a great marriage, because the social issues that I care so much about, for the record, we're in Belleville right now. I just went to Wendy's before I came here. You can't use the bathroom in Belleville without a key because of the addiction and homelessness crisis in your community.
On the north end.
Right?
Downtown.
But your issues of competition, of the economy, of how actually policy shapes, deeply connects with the social issues. So your homelessness, your addiction, you have, I think there was a report came out by the Canadian Human Rights Commission just before we did this, that they are now saying that Canada is in a human rights crisis because of poverty. So food bank usage, inflation, all of that is a lack of competition, government overreach, bad economic policy, spending more than we make, leaving our resources in the ground. So all of those things that you speak so great about deeply impact the things that I'm so passionate about, which is equity, fairness, and having people to have opportunity for life. Like your kids, like where are our kids going? What's going to happen to our children?
So, I think the great thing about Household Matters is no one is really doing that. We have a lot of news. We talk about bad all the time. There's a lot of headlines that dominate people's lives. And of course they get mad with that. One way to look at what's happening in politics right now, I think it's the blue dress argument that, in blue dress argument internet, everyone thought they were right. This one's right. It's the only way.
Explain what that is for people.
Well, I think for the main part would be, and there's a post I did this week on purchasing power, and it was the Big Mac index.
No, but I mean, tell people what the blue dress is for those who don't remember.
For the blue dress, there was everyone who saw the blue dress as blue and green was that, and someone saw it as blue and gold.
Right.
And
black and gold.
Black and gold. And it was amazing phenomenon because depending who you were, you saw the dress only and you couldn't see the other side, where people also saw the one side, they couldn't see the other side. And we are in that space in politics right now. And you see it all the time online where people say, I am right and you are wrong. And even my wife and I, Allison, had this debate today talking about AI is almost making it worse because AI, depending on what AI you're using, will enable you in the decision you've made and not allow you to look at the other side.
What do you mean when ChatGPT, I killed my dad? That's okay. You were warranted in your feelings.
You took out my appendix. You're supposed to have a kidney. Oh, my bad. Let's do it better next time. But that's what's happening right now. And I think the only way out, to your point, is more conversation. And you have conversation grounded in facts and conversations grounded on how do we fix this and have debate around how we fix that. That hasn't happened. And as far as I saw when I was a politician, you only have so much time. And I think we were all good at creating content. But what we're doing now that I'm finding now that I'm outside of being a politician is I now engage with people. And that engagement, number one, is generating a lot of interest. So I think this month alone, I'm well over 15 million, of which I'm having at least a million and a half people engaged, and which means that they want to be part of the discussion. And sometimes it's you're wrong, I'm right, but a lot of times it's I didn't think of it that way, or I want to contradict you on this thought. And I think we need to solve the blue dress argument in politics. We have to have more engagement and more discussion, because if we're just hurling things at each other and expecting us to win that way, to your point earlier, we're not going to win that way.
We can't win. And I think what you have to remember with the word facts is, again, that's in the eye of the beholder. what I tell you is a fact, and you're like, okay. And then, if you get somebody on the other side and they're like, those aren't facts, you're fighting a war of psychology more than you are of anything else in this country. And the algorithm feeds you that confirmation bias. So what you'll find is you started out here, and like in a month, you're like, I'm even more whatever I was, whatever I identified, because you're seeing more of the thing that confirms you and vilifies the other side. So you have to, and the more the harder it is. Like, once you see behind the curtain, like to your point of what we do, and I think why we connect with people and why people watch us as opposed to somebody else maybe is because we have the experience and the trust. So even if you hate me, even if you think, oh my God, Michelle's conservative and I think she's a piece of trash, you're still going to want to see what I have to say because I do have this experience. And maybe we can find something that we can align on. So like I did a post, for example, the other day, Wab Canoe, he's the NDP premier of Manitoba. And he finally said the thing that conservatives have been saying for a long time, leaving people to be folded over like zombies on the street isn't humane. Shocking. Thank you so much. Welcome to the side of this. And so you have to find this sweet spot of like comedy, humor, levity, and engagement, because I think the big thing that when people really engage with you is if you can take it to your point of like you put it out there and people may come at you and say this, okay. And that's actually a defining factor, I think, for a lot of open-minded, critical thinking people that, okay, I'm open to hearing what you have to say. But when you're shut off, like, no, I'm right. All I'm going to do is I'm not going to listen to you. I want to defend my position. Nothing, the needle never moves. No. The needle never moves. And so the blue dress gets bluer, right? As opposed to the reason you see the blue dress, because technically the person who sees the blue dress is right. And the person who sees the gold dress or whatever the hell color it was is also right. One of my favorite sayings was, everybody's a little bit wrong until you come into morality, which is what people use to argue stuff, which is what you see in this planet of war.
So I think the biggest thing that is really interesting about both of us coming into this is why do we do this? Why at all? And I mean, I post all the time, you lost, go away, or you'll say, well, you don't have to come on the page.
We could do a whole podcast on things people say. You can't hurt our feelings,
tweets,
by the way.
mean Instagram comments.
I would with my dad. You can't hurt my feelings.
Yes. But, the most part is we're driven to it. I've been driven the same way. What I'm doing now is from when I was a member of parliament. I generally want to fix the issues that are here for Canada. And the reason for that was the same as when I ran. I have 3 children and they're 12, 11, and 8. And I generally want them to have a great country to grow up in. When we look at the major issues in Canada right now, number one, if you look at probably what all of us agree to, you want our children to be able to grow up and get a good job, have equal opportunity, that they can buy a house that they can afford in a nice, safe neighborhood, that they can get an education that allows them to pursue the things that they are passionate about or find a passion in life, to be able to get a paycheck and be able to afford things for their family and create a family and live a life in Canada. And right now it's all the opposite, that they're making less money. The purchase power has declined in Canada. We have houses that are unaffordable for our youth. We have neighborhoods that are not safe. We don't have access to great health care or education. And the reason for the healthcare is the wait times are growing larger and larger when we have a aging baby boomer group that's entering the healthcare system, and it's a mess and disaster. And at a time when the opportunities aren't all there and they aren't all equal for everyone. So, why do we do this and why do I do this? Well, I generally want Canada to be a great nation. We all know it's an amazing, great nation as a whole, but we have systems and programs and we have governments that are broken and trying to force a way into doing things. And all I want to do and continue to do is using experts and ensuring we have great facts and engaging with the population is to say, we can fix this. It can be better. Have we looked at this way? Have we thought about this method? Have we pushed enough to make sure there's enough change structurally? And I think why, again, goes back to why I'm a conservative doing this. There wasn't a day in Parliament that I said, I'm in the wrong room when it came to caucus. Every single day you're there because conservatives really believe in a few things. One, they all believe in that message. Pierre always gave that message. But number two, we believed it was less government, not more. We knew it was less taxes, more competition. So ensuring we get rid of monopolies, ensuring that we have a greater paycheck going to homes, that people should be making more and keeping more of their paycheck. And I think the bigger part is we are on the land and within the borders of a country that should be the richest in the whole world. The whole world wants to be where we are. And the reason is because we have more natural resources per capita than any other country. We have the oil, natural gas. And you look at all the the minerals and the critical minerals and all the things the world wants. But on top of that, we have really smart people in Canada. We have really good institutions, good universities. And from that, we're just giving our stuff away and we're not keeping it in Canada. We don't have digital sovereignty. So we're really at a time when, yes, the US has been a threat to Canada. But the line I've had in my last a couple guests is the problem we've had in Canada. It's not that we are the 51st state, but we were called out for acting like it.
Right.
We never made sure that Canada was strong. And by strong and sovereignty, it means if the US said one day, we're not going to be there, or the US somehow got into a predicament where they couldn't be our partner, we had many to choose from. This is what you do in trade. This is what you do as a sovereign nation. But we allowed 80% of our trade to be with one nation. We didn't build pipelines east and west. We never developed policies to develop LNG or our critical minerals in any timely fashion. Mines are 15 years. Our digital sovereignty, 80% of our digital sovereignty is owned by Americans or Chinese, and 12% of our patents are Canadian, meaning we give everything away. So I think in a lot of ways, I say, yes, the Donald Trump conversation, I want to get into that later as well. It became something where I think the benefit to that for Canada was it woke us the hell up to say, wow, we're really not as sovereign as we thought we were. And we're actually susceptible to really bad things if the Americans said they didn't like us. And the problem with that is now going forward, it doesn't matter if we have a Democrat in the seat or if we have any other president, we are caught in a bind that we are stuck to one nation. And now it's going to take us all these years to unravel ourselves and make ourselves more competitive and what have you. And the worst part for me is we never stood up and were able to say, fine, you want to treat us like that, we're going to now go over here or over there. And guess what? There were no options. Carney's been around the world 8 times and said that he's made deals, but not once have we moved anything. The only nation that we've grown our trade with, you know who the nation is? The United Kingdom.
I was going to say
because,
China.
well, and it's because the price of gold bullion went up, which they trade with us, not through a formal trade agreement. We don't have one of those with them, but that's the only reason it's crept up, because the price of gold skyrocketed because of all the other bad things happening across the world. The point being, I think we have the opportunity to have great conversations with Canadians on that side. Certainly you have the same from where you come from. And I think it's a great time to be having conversations with Canadians about what they want to do with their country, because it's not the older generation who have to worry about that. Who we talk to increasingly on Instagram and Facebook that I feel are the youth. It's the under 55s who are all saying the same thing. I am stuck. We do not see a good future. How the heck are we going to find our way out of this?
Well, I think the elephant in the room, Ryan, is why. And I think that's where, I describe everybody sort of in a car race. And there's people at the front of the pack that can see the finish line and they understand the ideology and the intention behind the decisions and policy that are made. They sure wouldn't want you to drink out of this plastic bottle because God forbid, leave the oil in the ground. And then there's the people at the very end of the race who think government is there to help you. And the people at the front of the race, people who've been in Parliament, are like, are they? Are they there to help you? And I think the people have the power. And so I think all of your arguments for a sane person who understands economics or understands competition or understands how an economy works in free market, or as an entrepreneur, understands fully what you're saying. The problem is, Ryan, that as a business owner, you know this, the 1% is taking care of the 99%. And your employees want their paycheck. They don't take the risk. They don't really care how the business grows. They don't have anything invested. They show up to work and they go home. The voter is no different. And so what our job has to be is to connect to the person, to make them understand why our resources are in the ground. Why are we in this position of weakness? Why were we threatened as the 51st state? The why is the answer to everything. My favorite quote in the whole wide world is from Fred Rogers. Anything mentionable is manageable. And the reality is right now the liberals and the left, not the centrists who are just there to have conversations, will say you're rage baiting, you're the problem, all you do is complain. Well, if you don't point out that half of Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck or $200 away from insolvency, all of the things that you said is like pie in the sky, like what's goal, like I just need to buy bananas and get my kids to school, and I just need to get through the day. And the political strategists know that. They know that they can sell you something like $10 a day childcare because that sounds great. What they forget to tell you in the iceberg theory is that 1/3 of it is $10 a day childcare. 2/3 is that's actually not even possible. It's not even possible to have that program. And so what we're trying to do with people is give you the facts. And Ryan is so much more technical than I am in his economic knowledge and his business experience. And he's reaching a portion of the demographic that is facts. But this is far bigger an emotional war than it is anything else. Because you have Mark Carney, like anybody who has any kind of common sense is like, how are you happy with this guy? Like he's been in for a year. What's gotten better? Like I remember knocking on the door and being like, what's gotten better? Well, nothing, but I can't vote conservative. Why? Why can't you do that? Like, what is it that you hate women. Well, I'm pretty sure I am one. Oh, you're anti-abortion. Like all of these wild things that people have branded us. And so what you're in is a marketing war. And so I think Household Matters is the point of us, and the point of what we offer is there is actual information that we hope will help you pull back and have conversations that go, I didn't really think about it like that. And it all comes back to ideology. I can't stress this enough. And I want to give you an example. So I referenced Belleville. So Belleville and Peterborough are very, very similar in our homelessness and our addiction crisis, right?
Similar. Canada, by the way, Belleville is still under a state of emergency.
So is Peterborough.
Yes.
Yeah, good times.
Yes.
How's that working out for you?
Almost 3 years.
Great. Yeah. Okay, good.
Not rectified.
Yeah, but hey, we said words, right? Great speech. Mm-hmm. Can you buy your groceries with a great speech? Because I can't. So you have this situation where you have literally this notion of safe supply, and you've sold people this. You've went to somebody who's lost a child, or somebody your child's in the middle of addiction, and I look at you and I go, okay, your kid's going to use drugs no matter what. So here, let me give you a solution. I'm going to give you I'm going to give you drugs that I know are tested and safe. That way they won't die from the drugs. We'll keep them alive. And you go, okay, like you're a parent, you don't want your kid to die. You sign this dotted line with this thing they've sold you instead of your child is worth investing in. I am not going to give them the thing that is making them sick. We're going to help you. We're going to give you tools on how to deal with this. Addiction is a disease. We're going to get you safe housing. We're going to get you treatment that works. It's going to be a long road to recovery, but we're going to be here for you. Now this is where people don't pay attention, Ryan. In committee, you have Dan Mazier, who's the critic, who just exposed a massive conflict of interest where government officials who literally were advocating and lobbying the government for safe supply, I'm using air quotes if you're listening to this on audio, and then went and installed vending machines and got $3.5 million from the government to do that. What the actual hell is going on? So I'm answering your long question with this. It's an ideology. I went to Drumheller Prison. They took me and they said, Michelle, we need to show you something. They took me into a whole building dedicated for inmates to do drugs. Last time I checked, you went to prison for doing drugs. Now you're allowed to do them. The cartel is smuggling them in at $1 million in 7 months. I said, did anybody say, what the hell are we doing? the warden said to me, Michelle, the head of Correction Services Canada, the top doctor said we have to be providing drugs to these inmates. It's the humane thing to do. Wow. So my point of this conversation is it's an ideology. They don't want your economy to thrive, Ryan Williams. They don't want your resources out of the ground. Mark Carney talks about this in his book. He doesn't believe in that. When you believe something, everything else makes sense. Everything makes sense. What do you believe in? I do. I believe that the government should be the biggest employer in the country, that you should be dependent on us, that you all get the same wage no matter how hard you work, that you all get a medal. What does that do to society? I don't know. We could go to Cuba and see. I can tell you what it does. It destroys morale for young people who have no hope of even trying, because why would they bother?
And what's the answer? I mean, so all the things, and I think what we've seen through discussion, and when you have a strong opposition, which is also very important in the government.
Absolutely,
and
it is.
Really didn't understand that until I was in opposition. You saw that, and the worst thing that we've seen in the last year is, you'll get the government starting to put down the opposition as if this opposition is the worst thing for them, which is actually, it's part of our governmental system, the check and balance to power.
Star Wars taught us this a long time ago.
The rebellion
you need the balance, my friend.
Balance. So, you look at the solution. Now, BC, to what your point, they stopped safe supply. They found out after how many years?
But no accountability. Sorry, that was a bad idea. It's still the number one cause of death for 10-year-olds in British Columbia. Wow. Like, wrap your head around that.
And they didn't switch to the new program.
No, they just hope nobody would notice. Oh, you know what? That decriminalization thing, that wasn't great. Okay, how many people died?
Yeah, and you see, so, and I go back to 2015, where all the problems seem to have started in Canada, and there was problems before that. I'm not going to say that
there's always problems.
There's always been a problem, but when the big, deep divide in poverty, and especially when we look at comparing to the American economy to the Canadian, and there's been just this inversion of GDP per capita, and it happened after 2015. But you got to go back to those elections and ideology, and Harper did.
He predicted all of it.
Look at it back then. I always look at this. Back in 2015, on that election, Canadians could afford their mortgage. They could afford rent. We didn't have we had drug problems, but not the massive overdose crises we've had since then, especially not in Belleville or Peterborough. You didn't have problems with the groceries. We certainly didn't we had taxes always in Canada, fair taxes, but we had our share of good investments. We had, things where, when you go back to, I'll talk about, this Big Mac index, a Big Mac in the US and Canada were the closest in price. So around $4.90, well, $5 each, around 2012, 2010. So that's the last time when you could go and make a Canadian dollar and you could buy a Big Mac for $5, and you could make a US dollar and go buy a Big Mac for $5. And why we use Big Mac, it's standardized. It's the same. Yeah, it's terrible. We say it's not the healthiest thing for you, but it's one of those few products in the world. It's the same bun, lettuce, tomato, secret sauce, and burger patty. That's standardized. And why we use that is when we want to try to compare country to country, we want to take a product that's very similar across the world. And there's very few like that. You can look at apples. Well, it depends on subsidies. You can look at bread. Well, it depends on competition. You can look at vegetables. Well, the same thing. Automobiles. Well, China has mercantilism. They subsidize all there. So it's hard to compare with Canada. But a Big Mac is one of those items. And when you compare that Big Mac index across the world, in 2010 or 12, Canada and the US, you made certainly money and you could buy the same things. And it was a Big Mac. It was groceries as a whole. It was rent. It was mortgages, what have you. What happened since then? Right now in Canada, you go buy a Big Mac, it's $8. In the US, it's only $5.79. Not only that, we look at wages. Right now, if you're one example was a software engineer, and it's a similar job that's needed. It's one of the ones that won't be taken out by AI yet. But a software engineer in the US makes about $110,000 US. They make $90,000 Canadian. But the difference is, based on that Big Mac price, the software engineer in the US can buy twice as many Big Macs as the Canadian software engineer based on the salary. That's what we call the erosion of currency, or the erosion of purchasing power, we call it. So in 2015, you didn't worry about mortgage or groceries or the purchasing power of your dollar. you then said, well, I have the freedom and we're a rich country and we're doing really well. I then worry about, are we being fair with those that are addicted? And can we look at new ways that are different in the world that we're going to try them out?
Or I would push you back even further and say you actually make up problems when life is too comfortable.
Yes, maybe that's it. But that's when Greta Thunberg was here and we had 400,000 or 500,000 people on the street. That was 2019. But go back to, we're saying we're going to fix all the world's climate problems ourselves by taxing ourselves. We're going to, and the thing about that is we gave the power to government, and it was the power of democracy that did that. We're not going to, and I would argue the other thing that we really wanted in Canada at the time, which drove people to vote, was marijuana.
It was marijuana, and it was also, Canada's famous for voting someone out, not voting someone in.
Yes.
And so at the time when Harper was, everything has an expiration date, right? And it was like, we're done with this guy. He's boring. And along comes this guy. This is really important because Justin Trudeau's belief system and who he was, like there's a big saying, I didn't leave the Liberal Party left me. Because he came in so radical. And once you understand, the first thing I did when I got elected, Ryan Williams, was I read his mom's book. And I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. So when you understand how he grew up and what he sees the world as, you understand this radical ideology that he created, and then you see like the basically unraveling and division of society. We've never had this blue dress, gold dress camp like we have right now. We've never had it like this ever. Like you're either with me or you're against me, and you're the bad guy, and I'm the good guy, right? And so I think you could actually break it down even further in 2015, where when things are good, you don't think about it. And also to your point about our resources, Canadians are very famous for being complacent. When you have access to something, like this, if you have access to, health, wealth, money, or say you live in waterfront, and eventually one day you wake up, do you even see that waterfront anymore? You take it for granted. You take it for granted. You take your life, as in the words of health, you have a million problems till you have a health problem, and then you only have one. And you've taken your health you take it for granted that I can sit in this stool and cross my legs, or I can move my body, until you can't. And I think Canadians went into that realm very quickly and then got sabotaged by an ideology and a cult, a climate cult that people got sucked into because they didn't want to be bad. Like, I don't want to be seen as, I care about the environment. I care about the environment. Like, I'm not a bad person. Like, Canadians are not these dirty pigs. I remember the first time I saw a pipeline in Alberta, and I was like, this is what we're fighting over? This isn't even dirty. What is happening? But they shamed you. Like, if you don't believe this or buy into this and this anti-pipeline and like paper straws, you're a bad person. And they shamed you. Like,
you're also duped into thinking that was going to save the planet.
That's right? What I'm saying.
Yeah, like our 1.5% emissions. And look, we're for clean air and clean water, but it went. And my favorite analogy was when it's that one graphic, you've seen it on social media all the time, where this was me in the middle.
Oh yeah.
And this Liberal Party went so far left.
Totally.
And they brought me, and all of a sudden I'm standing in the right. But you're saying, but I want to be. I just want to be a center right or center left Canadian.
I'm just a normal person.
But, even, and why with the phenomenon the last election, with the NDP pretty much completely collapsing, I think you and I are probably both the same. I had the most conservative votes of 80 years of this riding or Hastings Prince Edward, but the NDP had the worst in 80 years.
Right.
They collapsed. So we went, it's funny when we talk about it was an American against an American election, but we became an American country where we had two parties now, not three. And yes, they have a leadership coming up and different things will happen. We'll see who gets elected. But at the same time, I think people wanted to vote for something that, and it was almost utopia-like, right? That Justin Trudeau promised, there was marijuana legalization. Then we're going to help the environment. We're going to be his whole thing with gender equality.
Yep.
And then it became, to your point, very divisive, very blue dress-esque. If we want to start with his comments dividing the country on vaccines, which was the worst, and we saw families divided and everything through COVID, to the environmental. And the environmental is not just because it's environmental. It was the environmental in the fact that we put in code things like C69, which don't allow us to do a pipeline at all in Canada. We put in code that you can't develop a mine for 15 years at a time when we need critical minerals if we're ever going to develop, I don't want to say electric vehicles, I'm going to say batteries in Canada. We came at a time where we increased the bureaucracy by something like 30%. We have so many more government workers at the time when you couldn't get a passport for 6 months.
And your phone's scary lately?
Yes.
Great.
At a really time when, and my biggest thing I love to talk about is when the healthcare side of Canada, the biggest thing that makes Canada unique from the rest of the world, I'm talking about the whole world,
you got it,
is universal basic healthcare. But the thing about that, because we're the only country, and the problem with that is through COVID, there was a line Chrystia Freeland had during COVID. I don't know if you remember it.
Please say it in her voice.
So yeah, I can't do it in her voice. I can't do it.
I think you can.
I
think
could,
it's all
I'm not
coming
going
back
to.
to you.
It's in my head. But her line was, we have a political opportunity, is the word that she phrased it. Political opportunity. And when we went through all the spending, because there was $600 billion spent during COVID. The most, you could take every prime minister previous, and that was more money spent than all those previous times. But of that money of $260 billion, which was COVID, there was $200 at least billion that was non-COVID spending. So as much as going into the new Alta line or whatever we want to talk about, these misspending of government. But you think of healthcare and Canada's healthcare. Not one more bed was created.
Nope.
Not one more doctor was
Nope.
hired. We had nurses fired based on vaccine status, and that was a whole other conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at today, and the numbers are today is we have some of the longest wait lists across the whole planet when it comes to surgeries and specialists and MRIs. You can wait 8 months for an MRI in Canada, where we are supposed to have this incredible healthcare. We have 6.5 million Canadians without a family doctor out of 41 million Canadians. We have, at a time, one of the biggest things I talk about is government will pay for all healthcare, but they don't pay for equipment. So they rely, and a lot of people find this really crazy, when we have hospital galas and we raise a lot of money, and communities are amazing in each of our regions that raise money, because government refuses to pay for equipment. And you know what happens when I talk about competition all the time, and when you have monopolies? I was always amazed at two things in government. One was the price of fire trucks and city buses when I was a municipal councillor. Like a fire truck is $1 million, right? And that's a supply and demand issue, but it's a monopoly issue. It's competition issues. One or two companies creating the same as school buses.
Also, when the government is paying for
Yes.
it, it's like insurance.
And
How much does the price go up?
And why is an MRI still like they're $1.5–2 million? So they're not easy to buy. The simplest answer to MRI wait times, well, let's buy more MRIs. Well, the government doesn't buy them. Communities do. And do you know how long it takes for a city like Belleville to raise 1.5 million? We have 3 hospitals in our, 4 if you count. There's 4 hospitals in our region, and each one are responsible for raising money for equipment. But again, this is what government does when government's in charge.
But nobody knows anything you just said.
No one knows this.
Ryan, everybody thinks that healthcare is all done for the government, and the government, you need to yell at Ford. Two things. Number one, the health transfers are from the federal government, and that's fine. But as everything is increasing in cost, so is healthcare, right? But nobody knows that there is so much that is raised privately. Like in our hospital in Peterborough, same thing. The people are funding the hospital, not the government. So when they say, "Oh, I don't want two-tier, I don't want private healthcare," what do you think is happening right now?
Well, it's all privately.
That's what I mean.
And what countries have that, where you can't get equipment unless you raise it from the community? But that's the reality. Is, to your point earlier, the federal government's giving $50 billion a year, which is just under what we collect in HST. Now, interest rates are way higher than that now. I think they're like 78 billion.
Yes.
So we're spending all this extra money. And then the added problem of, well, that's not enough. And the reason for that is started probably in the 90s, but across Canada, healthcare has increased. It's doubled or tripled based on one main thing, but it's cancer rates. So cancer care, first of all, we have great scientific breakthroughs that allow good cancer care, and that's pharmaceuticals, but it's also treatments for individuals. But because cancer has exploded and because those cancer solutions have been there, the cost for that has doubled or tripled. So that's number one. Number two, we have an aging population in Canada. So even in my region, we look at demographics of the Bay of Quinte.
Yeah.
We have one of the highest aging demographics in the whole country, and that doesn't bode well for healthcare. When you get older, you need more care. It's either going to be care in a hospital, or you're going to have certain health issues that prop up. But the problem with that is we're not increasing the funding, or we're not seeing anything happening from the government to pay for that. Worse than that, Michelle, when I talk about the whole state of the country, here's a fact that might really surprise you. You know, when we're looking at healthcare, it's a cost, it's an output. We need to pay for it. Same with all these other things, safe supply or
social services,
crime.
First thing to go on these social services when the economy is not doing well.
But Canadians are also taxed to the limit. I think we've also seen in a country where there's not much further we can go. And the three things of that are Canadians back in 2015, it's the number I have, we collected enough tax for all three levels of government in Canada. It was 30% of our GDP. In 2025, it's now 35%. So we're collecting, I think, between three levels of government, $600 billion more than we did in 2015. And
what are you getting in return?
Exactly. Healthcare hasn't gotten better. All these other problems are not where. So when it comes to, and I'll speak from the lowest rung, because I was a municipal councillor for 4 years, and the lowest rung of that is property taxes in the last 10 years have doubled.
And what are you getting?
And what are you getting?
What are you getting for services?
And they're the lowest rung because when we have downloading and the federal government doesn't pay for it, the provincial government has to pay for it, the provincial government doesn't want to pay for it, they download it, it becomes a municipal issue, then it's the property tax player. You know what municipal governments can't do? They can't run deficits. So when they run into an issue where they have to pay, this is why in Toronto and other areas,
tax me harder, baby.
You have to tax me harder, baby. And so we're seeing at a point, it's not only health, you know, our youth can't afford homes and it's an affordability problem. It's also the added burden that you're buying a home where you're paying extra taxes. And guess what? For places like Peterborough and Belleville, you're paying twice as much tax per value than they are in Toronto. Because you know how hard it is in Toronto to be a mayor. Maybe it's easier, but it's really hard to get into mayor and to double the tax rates. They've been increasing them. And they keep asking for more money for asylum. They're asking more money for
the TTC. It's great.
Yes.
It's really nice.
But these are all the issues we have in Canada. So going back to the beginning of this, the problem started in 2015, and we have all, and this isn't just ideology. We're saying it is part of ideology, but we've all the data we have points from there. Now, I can go into deep issues like competition, which started well before 2015. We can talk about competitive tax rates. There's certain things there for the corporate side. We can talk about how Canada, we weren't really on a pipeline before 2015 either. Maybe at the point we didn't need to, but we were still beholden to trade with the Americans. We've now come into a situation now, and there's two things. One you brought up. The ideology didn't work. So what's next? And how far do we blend?
It didn't work. It's not working.
Not
Brian.
working.
It's not working.
It's failing.
Like, you have the solution. You answered it all. And this, I come back to you as a business owner to break it down simply for people watching. If you are spending more than you are making, is your business sustainable?
No.
Okay. So how does a government make money? What are the three ways a government makes money?
Tax more. The big one is taxes.
Right.
Second one is to produce more, which they get taxes from.
Right.
Right. Consumption. The third way is to have more people earning a paycheck because the paychecks pay into the payroll tax.
Right.
They pay for that. So there's three main ways.
So the second one you said of getting government out of the way. So who fuels the economy in Canada?
Our main, small business.
Small business.
And then our resources are selling our natural raw, I'm not saying processed, raw resources.
But right now, small business is 99% of Canada's economy. What's happening every day? How many phone calls do you get a day?
New jobs created, 99%, yeah.
But how many calls do you get a day of a small business owner saying, I'm done, I'm out? They've made it so hard. They've made it so difficult to even keep a quarter of the dollar you make. They punish you constantly. They're squishing you out. So all of this that you're saying, your healthcare, and they're going to keep taxing you harder, all while not going to the balance sheet and saying, but what are we doing to bring it in? Do you want childcare? Okay, well, you better come up with $40 billion a year because that's actually what it's going to cost. Okay. Where are you getting that money from?
Well, let's talk about some bigger ones. There's a new high-speed train. So going from Toronto.
And why is the government responsible for that? Why is the government doing that?
Yes. But again, the price is, do you think it's going to be the $90 billion they've projected? Do you think
what is on time and on budget in the government? Absolutely nothing. Why? Because no matter what, at the end of the day, as a bureaucrat, we saw this over and over and over again. The deputy ministers. So everybody thinks the minister makes all the money and does all the stuff. No. It's the bureaucrat. It's the deputy minister that sits through all of these people that come and go. They collect well over $400,000 a year. They have no accountability. They have no key performance indicators. I sat on committee when we were spending $4.5 billion to reduce homelessness. Hi, Liberal minister, did you want to come to the Wendy's in Belleville? I can show you around. It's not working, right? We've increased homelessness by 100%. Who is accountable for this money? Who? So to your point, it's like there's no checks and balances because it is not. Imagine you ran your business like this. What would happen? What would happen to your business?
Bankrupt.
So what do we do? This is what I say to people. The people have the power. I know you feel like you don't. I know you feel like everybody's corrupt. And I'm not going to tell you that there aren't people in there that are, because 100% there are. But remember what I said at the very beginning of this podcast where I said, this guy's really nice and that's really hard to find in politics? I genuinely mean it. There are a few good people and you have to have checks and balances, and the people have to understand how they do it. The people have to be paying attention. You have the power because the politician votes you out. And so public shame works. The Alto high-speed rail, or whatever the hell it's called, Alto, is it high-speed?
Yeah, well, it's supposed
It's not
to be.
speed high. It's not.
It means stop in Spain. I'm
I
sure they'll
know.
use it in vain soon.
So this is a perfect example where the people, again, just like they did with WestJet, took back the power. They named and shamed. We don't want you to provide that type of service for us. We don't want you to take our farmland. We don't want you to do this. This is not going to benefit the greater good. This is going to benefit maybe a select few. And my children are going to carry that. And it's not working for the greater good. So the people have to have the power, which is what Household Matters is, where we're providing that information to you to hopefully have dinner table conversations to change hearts and minds so that you actually start to talk to family and friends again.
And I think to your point, that's the really good point. People have to ask why. Why? And I think
Every answer is why.
everything has to be why. You need to question everything. And so the facts on Alto are obviously Canada needs to come into the next century with a new high-speed train, 100%.
10,000%
These
people want a
bureaucrats,
train.
they came, and the politicians are coming with a plan that takes a train from Toronto to Ottawa, with skipping the whole corridor that needed the train itself, which was the Via Rail corridor. They call it the corridor from Windsor to Quebec City.
Have you rode the Via lately? Because it's always on time as well.
So the problem over the years, because we don't have a pipeline, is what's happened is, and because we need more freight, CN Rail now dominates that line. So CN Rail gets precedent. That's why Via Rail is never on time. And they tried to add a third track years ago. They went through Belleville. There were certain destinations where they had a third track, and they couldn't because, again, the problem is we have too many residential areas that are close to these tracks. And for whatever reason, they couldn't figure a way to get a third line. Now, the easy answer was, well, let's just do a high-speed rail through all the less populated Toronto, Peterborough, Ottawa route, which would be basically Highway 7. But if you've ever driven on that route, it's lakes, it's Canadian Shield. So when I met with VIA representatives, because they talked about this a year and a half ago.
They've been talking about it for 600 years.
Yes, an MP in my office. The officials in that office told me, because I said, my first question, of course, as a businessman, was, I don't believe it's going to cost what they say. And they said, no, it's going to be triple or quadruple what it is. Now, guess what? The high-speed rails that are run by government in California and Ottawa, they've almost been 10 times what they first projected. So again, when we talk about 90 billion, we say count on it being at least $300 billion. And then the second thing I say, Michelle, is I took a flight, and I love it. So I'll talk about competition. And one of the airlines I really like is Porter Air. They are actually a competitor in Canada. They've made it on their own. They've bought 36 jets. They're really competing with our airlines right now, which is what we need. But I was on a Porter flight from Ottawa to Toronto. I was doing a keynote in Toronto on open banking, and there were 8 people on the plane, on a plane that holds 50 some plus people. Again, when we look at the reasons for this, it was a lazy reason to go through Peterborough and just Ottawa with a high-speed rail, which of course is going to just rip up farmland and expropriate lots of families' farms and lots of family properties in order for what? Every hour you're going to have 5 people on that train?
Well,
what were we trying to do, and why are we trying to do it?
Because here's the message that I say to people. Canadians almost always will do the thing to help others. If you tell me to give you $5 to help a kid's hospital and it's going to actually help that kid, I'm going to give you my $5. The problem that we have in this country is you're asking for my money and you're actually making it worse. Things should not be getting worse. They should be getting better. If you're going to build me a train and people are going to benefit from it and it's going to increase jobs and opportunity and travel, take my money, right? Tax me. I will pay for that. But you've laid out very clearly how taxes have only increased and the services have decreased. That is the issue that Canadians have. Canadians are so giving. They're the most generous people I've ever met in my life. But they've lost that generosity because they've lost trust in government. And that's what Ryan and I are hoping that we can do with Household Matters is rebuild trust, rebuild conversations, give you facts. We want to hear from you. Like, this is the other thing. Like, we want to hear from you of what your experience is. And I think collectively what you've seen probably through this conversation is Ryan brings a unique lens that I don't bring, and I bring a lens that Ryan doesn't bring. And that's why I think it's the perfect, I wouldn't say we're Star Wars, like
The Rebel
the light
Alliance.
and dark, but we are trying to create that whole circle of ultimately at the end of the day, solutions where Canadians come back to a place. Like, how many friendships did you lose when you became an
lots,
MP?
Lots. Still have lost them.
Family,
family,
friends.
yeah.
Like, that's not right. And I say what you will about the Americans, but they will, and for the most part, they sit in a room. They're like Italians. They yell it out. They scream and yell at each other. You're wrong. I'm right. Let's eat. We don't even do that. We don't even eat together anymore. We don't even speak to each other. And that is the demise of a country.
No. So I think that's what we're ultimately trying to bring. I think we're going to have a lot of great conversations. Obviously, a conservative lens on it, which is just lower taxes, more competition, ensuring that we have greater paychecks. And I think the greatest part about that is you're right. It's conversations, because I think a lot of people have also tuned out. There are people we know that have given up.
Yes.
There's businesses that are there. And the worst part, I think, Michelle, we're entering in a time, I think, where Canadians really need that conversation, because we know this already. The job numbers last month were 85,000 jobs lost in the month of February. I think it was 15,000 the month before. It's 100,000 jobs since the start of January. And we had Q4 in 2025, which was a net loss for GDP. When you have 2 quarters in a row, you have what's called a recession. There's no way losing 100,000 jobs, we're getting a positive quarter. Canada, therefore, is more than likely entering a recession. Recessions are not good, not during a trade war, not at any time. We're going to need more conversations on how do we bring hope to people? How do we have conversations on what's needed? And I say the greatest part about conversation and why it's needed and why it works and why Family Matters is great and our Household Matters is great is the WestJet example last month. How many people, or how many of you out there saw the video where WestJet launched this 28-inch seat? Wasn't that amazing? Wasn't that a great corporate strategy where they showed
Nobody
the
will
legroom?
notice. They won't notice.
They won't notice. They even said that corporate members went out and traveled, but there was all this video and I shared it. I think I had 1.5 million views. You shared it. Yeah. We had a lot of people talk about it. Well, what happened? WestJet reversed its course. We're not going to do 28-inch legroom anymore. Wow, we listened to the people. It wasn't competition, because the argument in the airline industry right now, there's no competition in Canada. Porter's slightly in there, but it's a WestJet Air Canada dominated market. 85% of the airline market shares from those two, but it was the people who changed that. And what I'm hoping as we continue conversation is that it's the people, because evidently, no matter if we're in Parliament or not, it's people that we love as Canadians. It's people who share the same mindset. It's their children. It's the future of Canada. We love Canada. I love Canada. You love Canada. We want Canada to be successful. We don't want to be the 51st state. We don't want to be subservient to anyone else. We want to be more sovereign, but we want to be successful. And I think those conversations hopefully will change some minds to make sure that we're moving in some different directions. And hopefully, to your point, we're at least just having conversations that we can bring to the table. And maybe as a country in the future, we come together more.
Bit by bit, step by step. It's how we got into this mess. And it's going to be bit by bit, step by step to get out of it. And that's what I would say to people is it's, you don't think you're moving the needle at all, but some you are. And it's just so slow. It's so slow. But I see it. I see a shift, and I see the people ready for change. And I'll leave you with this thought. I posted this thing yesterday because on the very last day, the Liberals appealed the Federal Court of Appeals ruling on the illegal use of the Emergencies Act by the Liberals in the final hour. And I was so upset because I thought this could be an opportunity to unite Canadians. Like the Liberals had a chance. Mark Carney had a chance to say, okay, Justin Trudeau did this. It wasn't the right path forward. We are united as Canadians. We need to move forward and heal together. And instead he did this and doubled down. And I said, he's further dividing us. And one of you wrote on the comments and you said, no, this unites us even more, that we need to stick together and move forward. And that was a great perspective for me. And I like it.
Well said. Well, thank you for being here.
I'm coming back.
We'll continue the conversation.
I need to go get that key for the Wendy's bathroom.
That's right.
Now.
Go get the key, and hopefully we see some progress there soon. Thanks very much, Michelle. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.